Man, talking about scalping Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The video goes on to show the surveillance footage of Congressman Loudermilk giving his tour. He's standing there in the suit with the mask. Some individuals can be seen taking photos of staircases, tunnels, security checkpoints used daily by lawmakers and their staff members. And to underline again, Joe, what we heard from Officer Harry Dunn a few minutes ago on the show, the Capitol was closed to the public on January 5th. This tour shouldn't have taken place at all, let alone in the places it did.
Well, somebody we have on the show all the time, former CIA agent, Mark Polymeropoulos. Mark Polymeropoulos.
There it is.
Polymeropoulos. He just tweeted this. He goes, I haven't seen all of the footage, but I've seen some. And after running CT ops my entire career, having a damn good idea of what pre-attack casing is all about, the video simply forces a need for more inquiry. It should not have been dismissed. Odd that the odd Capitol Police statement, anybody that's done this type of work before sees their case, as Mark said, a CIA guy who's been doing this his entire career says it's very obvious they're casing the joint. They're taking photos. And again, you got a member of Congress lying about an insurrection against the United States of America and against our government, trying to overthrow an election, overthrow American democracy, stop the peaceful transition. And he's got a guy who's casing the joint where cops were brutalized and beaten, and he's still lying through his teeth.
And when first asked about it, he said he didn't give a tour at all. So ask yourself why he would lie about giving a tour on January the 5th.
That's why there's got to be consequences for the leaders who were part of this, those that planned it. There have been several hundred people, I believe, indicted or charged already. But they've been people who are actively involved on the ground at the Capitol. The people who planned it, aided and abetted it, the reason why there's got to be consequences, Joe, or it happens again, or people believe that this isn't acceptable, when you have people calling it a dust-up,
right?
When you have people dismissing it and saying move on. These pictures are so powerful that without consequences, you send a message that this is acceptable.
And by the way, the politicians, Donald Trump, all the other crackpots that were using this as a grift to make money.
To make money.
They knew exactly what they were doing. I will tell you, as angry as I get personally seeing those people on the mall, I don't think those people were there as part of a grift. Those people were there because they had been convinced by someone they voted for, by someone they believed in.
It was organized political activity.
Right. They believed that the election had been stolen. That's the only reason they'd go up there. They're not going up there for the grift. And so the idea that we send them to prison and allow Donald Trump to make $250 million on the big grift.
And pay people $60,000 to speak at a rally.
Right.
2 minutes.
A 2-minute speech. Pay a member of the family $60,000 to give a 2-minute introduction of Don Jr. to continue to give money. But again, let me say this again. Donald Trump raised $250 million off of the big lie in the biggest of grift. And so the question is, why is he still at Mar-a-Lago?
And where's that money?
And these people who can't afford law, a lot of them can't afford lawyers, can't afford what they're going through. Why are these people in jail? Now, they should be in jail. But they aren't the ones that ran the conspiracy. This would be like putting Jim and Tammy Faye Baker's dupes. Sadly, my grandma was one of them, writing check after check after check to the PTL Club. Like, this would be like saying, oh, well, Jim and Tammy lied forever, built a corrupt ministry. It's like blaming the people who were victimized by that lie. So there has to be
consequences.
There has to be consequences for Donald Trump and everybody from the top up, not just for the cops who were beaten, the cops who died of a stroke the next day, the cops who committed suicide because they went through that day, but also for the people who were lied to, whose lives have been forever destroyed, not because they faced justice, because we still do have justice in the United States of America, but because it was Donald Trump who put them at the Capitol and, by extension, put them in their jail cell.
And he keeps his supporters on the line by calling them patriots, by flattering them, calling them beautiful people. There was a lot of love that day. But what he's really doing is taking the money out of their pockets, $20 at a time, to the tune of $250 million, and then letting a bunch of them go to prison while he sits at Mar-a-Lago and plays golf. That's how he really feels about the people who support him. And Katty Kay, we can talk about the tour, but equally disturbing is the video the next day of one of the people who is alleged to have been on the tour with Congressman Loudermilk. It just speaks to the intent of that crowd, why they thought they were there, how seriously they took their purpose, that they'd been sent there by President Trump, prepared to commit violence against members of Congress.
Yeah, there are still a few questions, aren't there, surrounding this video. We don't know yet whether those people who were on that tour and who are speaking about taking out Nancy Pelosi, taking out AOC and Chuck Schumer, whether they actually went into the Capitol. Perhaps we'll hear more about that when we get the committee hearings today. But we don't know whether they were just kind of talking tough, which they certainly are talking tough when you listen to that video, or whether they actually went into the building and were part of the people who were there saying that they were going to hang Mike Pence once they were inside the building. So there are still some questions surrounding this, but questions certainly for Congressman Loudermilk. I mean, why did he deny that he had taken a tour? And it's not just like one family with one kid. There's other people hanging on this tour, too. I was texting with a Democratic member of Congress whose office is in that area last night and who was there on January the 6th during the insurrection, who'd been hiding in his office, and said, you know, it's really chilling to see them taking photographs of the staircase where my office is and think, you know, what were they planning to do? What was the intent? Nobody goes to that staircase. Nobody photographs that staircase. It's not remotely interesting to anybody. And, you know, I think for a lot of members of Congress who are watching this, it revives memories of that day when they were scared for their lives. I was calling them on that day. They were scared. They didn't know if they were going to get out alive. And then to see a fellow member of Congress with a group that is taking photographs that potentially led to your office door, I think that's very chilling.